It's happening again. It is happening again. People are getting worried about an upcoming Nintendo Switch release, arguably one of the bigger games for the system in 2022, and it's something I want to talk about. Of course, we're talking about Splatoon 3 in this video. Now, this was based on an article that went up over on Nintendo Life's channel yesterday on their website. I'll have a link to it in the description box down below because it doesn't really step on my toes or anything like that. It's basically just taking people's opinions and showcasing them when it comes to Splatoon 3 and why some people are worried. There's a couple different facets with this as well, a couple different things that this essentially stems from, why they are worried, and I want to go over all of them with you because I'm someone who's made videos being worried about games before. Two games come to mind, those being Cyberpunk 2077 for consoles and of course Mario Strikers Battle League. I was concerned about both of those games. I thought there were some spooky things about those games and it's kind of right. It's kind of right. I mean, I caught a lot of flack for my Cyberpunk video. It was one of my most downvoted videos, but it ended up becoming very even in the end because people came back to it and they're like, all right, my bad, you were spot on with this. Now, when it comes to Splatoon, I'm not the hugest Splatoon fan in the world, but I am very familiar with the franchise. Back in the Wii U era when Splatoon 1 first came out, I actually reviewed that game for Nintendo Enthusiasts, which was the website I was working on. I believe I gave the game a 7.5 out of 10. Really liked the graphics, liked the gameplay mechanics. It was just the lack of content on day one that I couldn't look past it. There was only like 5 maps to choose from, and obviously this game grew over time. There was more substantial things added into the game. We then got Splatoon 2 for the Nintendo Switch during the summer of Switch when the system first came out in that 2017 year. Was just crazy for new first party titles, and the game did a lot of things better. It did a lot of things better. It had more content, had more weapons, more things to do, more single player things to do. So I enjoyed that game. I don't know if I ever made a video on it. I'm sure I did to some extent, right? I mean, that would make sense, but who knows? Who cares? We're talking about Splatoon 3 today. Now, there's a couple different things that are going on with this, so we're going to take a look at the article now and then just sort of go over these things. Stop tempting me with rims and stuff, you damn targeted ads. People are getting pretty worried about Splatoon 3, and then it basically goes on here, and then here's one of the first things that is talked about with this. Splatoon 3 fans, so Splatoon 3 is Nintendo's next big release in about a month. Perhaps they'll release something relating to it like they did with Xenoblade. Nintendo, no, here's a 30-minute direct coming out in 2 days about a game that releases in November, 3 months away. Now, I don't really understand what they're talking about with that. I guess maybe they're talking about Pokemon. Pokemon is owned by the Pokemon company. Like, yeah, Nintendo is a part of that, but that doesn't really have anything to do with it. I mean, let's talk about Xenoblade 3 since you mentioned it here. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, of course, just came out. And did that game get a whole bunch of stuff? Like, it was in an initial Nintendo Direct when it was announced, and then we got trailers leading up to the game's release, and then the game released, and everyone seemed cool with that. I think a lot of this is stemming from the fact that we did not get a traditional June Nintendo Direct, because if we did, obviously Splatoon 3 would have been a massive focal point of it. It probably would have been the centerpiece, the showcase thing, the game that we saw the most out of, because there are a lot of questions leading up to the release of the game. Now, it comes out towards the tail end of September, so really, it's more like 2 months is out, maybe a month and a half. I'll give you, but say a month. I don't know, that's kind of silly to me, but I think if we had a normal Nintendo Direct, this wouldn't even be an issue because we would already know all this stuff. We would already be well familiar with this game. All we've gotten so far are a couple little trailers and things from that nature, but I mean, it looks like Splatoon 3 would look. Now, obviously, there are lots of questions with it, and I'm not going to downplay the questions because we're going to talk about them towards the end of the video, but to sort of compare it to something that happened with Xenoblade 3 and then, compare it to the Pokemon Presents presentation, it's apples and oranges when it comes to Pokemon. Nintendo is not the one saying, hey, Pokemon Company, do a direct style presentation on the Pokemon stuff coming out in November. No, that's the Pokemon's company's choice in order to do something like that. And then we have someone else here saying pretty much the same thing. I'm hyped for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, but I don't really need to know more right now. Splatoon 3 comes out in about 5 weeks, and I feel like we don't have enough at the moment. I praised Nintendo for the Splatoon 3 Twitter news drops, but last month they really hadn't had any. So, okay, once again, you're asking for more information on the game, and I feel like you're going to get that information on the game, and it is interesting that it hasn't been, brought to the forefront yet, but that goes back to the whole thing I just said about a standard June Nintendo Direct. If we had that standard June Nintendo Direct, nobody would care because you would already know about the game. But Nintendo decided to not do one. And by not doing one, it opened up a lot of questions. There's still questions about the second half of the year because there's heavily rumored games from industry insiders and shit like that that are supposed to come out still this year that we haven't even seen. You got to remember, look at the turnaround time for something like Super Mario 3D All-Stars. It was like 6 weeks. They showed the game, did this whole big presentation for it. Once again, that was something that people said wasn't going to happen, and it ended up did happening. They, did a whole big presentation for it, and then the game came out 6 weeks later. So it was like, this definitely feels like that same sort of style where Nintendo just, for whatever reason, felt like they didn't have enough stuff to talk about at E3 or during June, the E3 season, and then they just went in this direction. I feel like you are going to get that information. I can understand being a bit impatient and being a bit worried about that, but I don't think it's necessarily a cause for concern because this is a big title. This isn't like an offshoot game, like one of these Nintendo sports games that we've been getting with like Mario Golf and Mario Strikers and stuff. This is a mainline game. We already have the base with Splatoon 2 as well. And, when you look at the amount of content that was in Splatoon 2, I think it's safe to assume that you're going to get at least, at the very bare minimum, that much content on day one from Splatoon 3. So if that's the case, you don't have to worry about things like cut content and, these random free updates like you see with games like Mario Strikers Battle League, because that is a problem for a game like that. Whereas Splatoon 3, I don't think that's going to be an issue. But beyond just not getting the information, we have the other thing that's going on with this, because that's not the only reason that people are worried or concerned. I don't know what I'm going to title this video. It'll either be worried or concerned. So whichever, I'm covering my bases here with that. But you can go down and see if there's other reasons why people are concerned. We have a video here from YouTuber Arlo saying that it's Splatoon again, which this might be enough for a lot of fans, but there are people who are searching for a reason to splash their hard-earned cash on a new Splatoon entry. And I guess this whole video, I don't really watch Arlo. I'm sorry. I don't watch much video game content, so don't take that and run with it. But he wants to be hyped for Splatoon 3, but I guess he's not because he feels like it's essentially just Splatoon again. Now, there's nothing wrong with that opinion. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. However, I do think this opinion is a bit strange, I would say, because let's look at a game we just had a third entry of that came out on the Nintendo Switch, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, you look at Xenoblade Chronicles 3, it's a Xenoblade game. You look at every other trailer from every other Xenoblade game, it looks a lot like those games. Sure, there's small, intricate details that fans of the games would see, but if you're an outsider looking in, it just looks like another entry in the Xenoblade Chronicles franchise, and that's not a bad thing. This is the third entry in a franchise that started out pretty rough and rocky. There was questions on whether this was going to be successful. And then, of course, it ended up being one of the most successful games on the Wii U. Splatoon 2 came out back in 2017. Everyone seemed to love it for the most part. So it's not like we're talking about a reboot with this game or, like something like a Mario Galaxy situation. Like if Super Mario Galaxy 3 was announced, you would expect it to look like Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, not a style of like new Super Mario Brothers. You see what I'm saying here? We're not rebooting the franchise. It should be similar. It should be familiar. It should just be built upon what we've already gotten so far and then made better, more things added to it, more, single player stuff, more gameplay modes, more sort of gear to wear, more levels, more weapons, more everything. So I think, just in my personal opinion, that's kind of silly to be like, oh, well, it's just more Splatoon. It's like, well, yeah, no shit. It is Splatoon 3. It's not, Splatoon the prequel, like how Inklings came to be or something like that. That's an action adventure open world game or something, where there's like breeding of Inklings. And you gotta think of things like that. Like, where did these Inklings come from? Like, they could have like a breeding simulator style game where you have to populate the world with Inklings. Obviously, jokes aside, I expect this game to look and play and feel like Splatoon. It's supposed to. It's just supposed to be better. It's supposed to be better than we have seen before. This isn't a situation, God of War. Look at God of War 1 through 3. Looked like God of War, and then we got a reboot of it. So, just my opinion. When it comes to this game, I'm not necessarily concerned with it. I think it'll be a quality title. I am wondering how much online stuff will be there on day one, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because, like I said, Splatoon 2's online was way better on day one than Splatoon 1's was, with much more content, and I feel like they would keep advancing that. This isn't a game where they need people to stick around with like a gimmick. You know what I'm saying? Have a reason to come back, like, oh, here's Daisy. Here's Shy Guy. You guys better come back. Splatoon is a game that people still play to this day. Splatoon 2 heavily. You know, there's still tournaments and shit for that. So I'm not too concerned with it. It'll be a day one purchase for me. I am interested to see what they've added into it, but just relax a little bit. You know, it's not the end of the world because we don't have all the information right now. It's a little bit strange, but you're dealing with a strange company. You're dealing with Nintendo, the weirdest freaking company in the world. So let me know in the comment section down below how you feel about this. This was a very highly talked about thing over on Nintendo Life's forum, or in the comment section of this article. I expect this to be a very talked about thing in the comment section of this video. So let me know your thoughts and feedback in the comment section down below. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. If you are new to the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share. Hit that bell notification as well. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.